There's a book that has sent shockwaves through Catholic newsrooms across Europe. It wasn't published by a niche publisher. It was written by one of the world's most authoritative cardinals. And inside, there's a word no one expected. The word is paganism. Not outside the church, inside. That same week in France, 3 priests were expelled. For a cassock, for a Latin Mass, 2 stories, 1 truth. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these 2 events, a book by an African cardinal and 3 priests expelled in France, are actually the same story. Let's reconstruct the sequence. On May 4th, 2026, the French magazine La Nef published a long interview with Cardinal Robert Sarah. The title of the article is The Return of Paganism Within the Church. The Return of Paganism Within the Church. A title that leaves no room for ambiguity. The interview is excerpted from the Cardinal's new book, 2050, written with journalist Nicolas Diat and published by Fayard. 2,188 pages, a vision of the Church in 25 years. Sarah isn't just any name. Here's why. When Sarah speaks, traditionalists around the world listen, not because she has institutional power that she lost with the end of her term, but because she has moral authority. And in the book 2050, Sarah says things no cardinal has ever said with such clarity. He describes what he calls liquid paganism, a paganism that manifests itself not with idols, but with the silent loss of a sense of the sacred. The signs he identifies are precise: the erosion of the sense of sin, the difficulty in affirming revealed truth, the trivialization of the liturgy, the fascination with worldly categories. When faith is reduced to sociological language, Sarah writes, something of paganism returns in the modern form of man putting himself at the center. It's no longer God at the center, it's man, and that's paganism. And then Sarah adds something even more urgent. She speaks of the episcopal consecrations of the priestly fraternity of St. Pius X, announced for July 1st, 2026, in Amiens. He says that the situation is objectively serious and that it saddens him deeply, and he asks and explicitly asks the faithful to pray, to avoid the irreparable. A cardinal who asks for prayer, not declarations, not excommunications, prayer, because he knows the stakes are enormous. Here, we need to understand exactly what's happening, because this week's second story is the concrete face of what Sarah describes in abstract terms. Northern France, Department of Somme. On April 27, 2026, Bishop Gérard Lestang of the Diocese of Amiens announced that 3 priests would not renew their mandates. The 3 priests are Father François-Régis Favre, Father Éloi Legrand, and Father Pierre-Marie Brocherie. They arrived in September 2025 from the Diocese of Fréjus-Toulon, for years the refuge of traditional Catholicism in southern France. What had they done that was so serious that they were expelled? They wore cassocks. They celebrated the Novus Ordo, partially in Latin. They taught Catholic morality without compromise. Bishop Lestang officially states that the issue isn't the cassock, nor Latin. The issue, he says, is a relational conflict with the communities. But the local media tell a different story. The ICI newspaper runs a headline that leaves no doubt: 3 overly traditionalist priests removed from the diocese. Overly traditionalist. Those are the words used. What we see is only the surface. Fdesouche reports an even more significant detail. The complaints against the 3 priests came primarily from paroissiens de gauche, left-wing believers, not by Catholics scandalized by abuse, not by believers concerned about doctrinal irregularities, by left-wing believers who felt disturbed by priests who prayed in Latin and wore cassocks. And the bishop agreed with them. He removed the three priests, he chose peace with the left-wing faithful, and he dismissed the priests who defended tradition. This is the crux of the matter. Sarah senses that paganism has entered the church. The liturgy is emptied, the sense of sin is eroded, morality is in constant negotiation. And the three priests of Amiens were expelled precisely because they fought that paganism. The cassock is the sign of the sacred. The Latin Mass is the bastion of traditional liturgy. Moral teaching is the answer to relativism. The question every believer asks when faced with these two stories is precise. When did it become acceptable to remove a priest for praying in Latin and wearing a cassock? Why didn't Bishop Lestang tell the truth publicly? Why hide the real reason and talk about a relational conflict instead of openly stating that there was a liturgical and doctrinal conflict? Institutional lies are often more revealing than the truth they conceal. Cardinal Sarah titled his book 2050. It's no coincidence. It's the question he poses to us. In 25 years, will the Church still be recognizable? Will children born today still find the faith we have received? Sarah doesn't give in to pessimism. She sees signs of hope, adult baptisms in Europe, the resurgence of Eucharistic adoration, young people seeking silence, fervent monasteries, large families. And then he adds something crucial. Faith isn't transmitted through ecclesiastical management or administrative reforms. It's transmitted through witnesses, through men and women willing to pay a price for what they believe. Father Favre, Father Legrand, and Father Brochery paid that price. They were dismissed from a diocese where they had come to serve. But they still wear the cassock, they still celebrate Mass, they still teach morality, and will teach it in Fréjus-Toulon, where they will return. And he asks for prayer, not as resignation, as a weapon. The same weapon as Athanasius, the same weapon as the three priests of Amiens, who will return not as defeated, but as witnesses. Athanasius was exiled 5 times. The 6th time never came, because Arianism collapsed and Athanasius died in his see, surrounded by his people. The history of the Church is the story of this. Tradition suffers, resists, and ultimately survives. Tradition is not defended by institutional power. It is defended by fidelity, prayer, and time. And time, throughout the history of the Church, has always vindicated tradition. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.